Welcome to the Trends from the Trenches podcast, co-produced by BioTeam and BioIT World. I'm your host, Ari Berman, CEO of BioTeam. Today, we have a truly remarkable guest who has navigated the worlds of music and science with an incredible purpose. He's a guy I'm lucky to call a friend, and his story is one of artistry, fatherhood, and a relentless fight for a cure. You know him as a captivating frontman for two incredible bands, the anthemic indie rock group Alpha Rev and the progressive rock supergroup Flying Colors. He's brought us songs that have topped the charts and filled stadiums around the world with instantly recognizable hits such as New Morning and Sing Loud. But beyond the stage and studio, our guest's most profound journey began at home with his two daughters, Weston and Rose. When his youngest daughter, Rose, was diagnosed with a rare debilitating genetic mutation, HNRNPH2, which encodes a protein that belongs to the heterogeneous nucleoribose protein family and plays a role in RNA processing and transport, his path changed forever. What he discovered was a heartbreaking reality. While there are over 10,000 known rare diseases affecting millions of people, as reported by the National Center for Advancing Translational Science, most of them, including this disease, have no treatment. Refusing to accept that fate, he channeled the same passion and creativity he poured into his music into a new mission. He founded Alpha Rose Therapeutics, a biotech company dedicated to finding a treatment for Rose's rare disease, and in doing so, created a scalable model to help thousands of other families facing similar challenges utilizing approaches like antisense oligonucleotide-based treatments. He is a testament to the fact that a parent's love can move mountains, or in this case, revolutionize our understanding and ability to diagnose and treat rare diseases, bringing hope where there wasn't any before. Please join me in welcoming the one and only Casey McPherson. Hey, Casey.
Hey, Ari. I wish you were around. That was the best intro I think I've ever had.
Oh, awesome. I'll give it to you then. Oh, welcome. But I've really enjoyed getting to know you over the last few years, as randomly as that happened. And story is one that I felt like the BioIT community could really grab onto, I think. And given that the mission and purpose of what you're doing is largely about kids, about your kid, but also kind of about just pushing the envelope of precision medicine, which we talk about in our field all the time, thought it'd be fun to hear your story. So tell us a bit about your journey and how you came to entirely switch fields from record deals to running a startup pharma company.
Wow. Well, what do they say, that if you knew how hard something was, you probably would never do it, but that's been, you look at the rare disease metrics or at pharma metrics or the success of a drug metrics, and actually they're better than being a successful artist, those metrics. So I'm sort of used to the deck stacked against you, But I think that there were things in learning music inherently is about creating something out of nothing. And if you've really been in that environment for long enough, you will find times when you make something that you were just surprised it even came out of you. But that's just the beginning. And that's actually the easy part. The hard part is turning it into a product that, can have some sort of global reach. And so the songwriting, in some ways, I would account that to preclinical drug development for genetic treatments. We have the tools and technology now to cure and treat hundreds, maybe even thousands of these diseases that have no treatments right now. But it's that next step of turning it into a product and getting it available. And so, when Rose was diagnosed, my experience was as an entrepreneur. My experience was as a creator. And when I saw that it wasn't a technology issue, it was a business model problem, it was a systems problem, I thought, wow, maybe this super passionate, naive, like I'll never give up Scotch Irish kind of guy, like hit me one more time kind of person, and just try to take me down.
That we have that in common.
Yes, we do. Gluttons for punishment. Maybe we could look at some new models that would work for these small population diseases, because it's bigger than cancer and AIDS combined when you look at it as a whole. But the way we've been looking at it is these tiny diseases one by one by one by one. And so, when I saw that ASOs in particular were programmable medicines, it was relatively safe to get into the clinic if you did X, Y, and Z around safety and tox. That it was sort of, kind of calling, saying, hey, I might be scalable, I might be able to treat a lot of kids. And so, we made an ASO. I recruited some scientists, right, that had been doing drug development, to really teach me and train me on the high level side. And then Ultragenyx and some other rare disease biotech companies really took me under their wing, to mentor me. But it was, it was really scary at first I had a record deal from Sony on my desk or go after a treatment for my daughter. I knew I couldn't do both. And it's the first time in my life that I chose that something was more passionate for me than making music. And I got to say, man, making these treatments is pretty freaking rock and roll, and it's not, it's not for the faint of heart, and so I feel strangely very at home in this environment.
That's awesome. And it's funny because I don't think I've ever really thought about like drug development as rock and roll, I guess because I've been exposed to it for so long, but I think you're right because it really is. It's like, what have we not done yet? Let's try that. Right.
Absolutely. You have the gall to make an assumption that you have an idea that has never been done before, even within an assay or even within a study, like all these little points in time through the development process. Everybody's got to have a little bit of there's something inside me that's creative enough and smart enough to be able to produce something that has never been produced before. And it's a humbling thing, but it's also, that's what rock and roll is. Rock and roll is, it's like I am not going to do what other people say is the way. This is just how you're supposed to be or how you're supposed to do it. And, maybe you could argue that we haven't really seen that movement since the 70s. It's an ideal. It's a type of person. And now the lead singers are the scientists in the lab. I'm just continually amazed at what people come up with.
It's interesting. I think I've told you this before, but people often ask me why scientists are nuts, and I tell them because science is 99% abject failure. And I guess rock and roll is too.
Oh, absolutely it is. Yeah. I remember at the height of my career when I had a top 10 hit and a video on VH1 and I was everybody's best friend, people were like, you're famous. You're like, it was as if you had never been anything else. But for me, all I could think of was the decades of failure and empty rooms I played, broken down vehicles, living under the poverty line, all the labels that told me no or said you're not good enough, and seeing how science works. It's like you have to like re-engineer how you think about failure, because failure is acting as if like you've lost. And that's just not the case with music or with science. Failure is like one step further to the solution.
The truth is failure is never actually failure unless you decide it is, right? Yeah. Because we don't learn without failure.
No.
We don't better ourselves. We don't look inward. You have to fail to move forward. There's no way to do it otherwise. Otherwise you think, oh, I'm great. Everything's great. So
yeah, I completely agree. And it's almost as if, and I'll tell you this thing with Rose, the amount of suffering that these rare diseases cause family, the amount of pain that she goes through. We often look at things like failure and pain as these things we try to avoid.
Yeah.
And yet you cannot make anything great or learn to be anything great or learn to do anything great without an immense amount of failure through that process. And that I don't know, for me, I look back at what we've accomplished, and without the pain that Rosie goes through, without the pain that I feel, I don't think I would have had the self-discipline to learn the science and the business and do the amount of work and failures to get, even just to the point that we're at now. And so I think it sort of turns everything on its head of sometimes it's best to jump into all that because it motivates you in a way that nothing wrong with living life on the beach, but living life on the beach doesn't really encourage you to change a whole lot.
Not necessarily, no. And there's nothing like your, being connected to a problem, like your kid being the having the problem, right? So, but that's a great segue. Why don't you tell me a little bit about how Rose's mutation has affected her? And what does she deal with?
Yeah. So I'll start on the kind of micro, and then where the light bulb went off for me for Alpha Rose on the macro level. So Rose lost her ability to talk. So this gene starts expressing, postnatally, and then she really struggles with walking. She doesn't have any friends. She can't go to school. She is not potty trained, and she's 9 years old. And
she's cute as can be, by the way.
She is.
She's so cute.
I gotta say, she's even through all these things, her personality still shines through, where she purposefully does something she knows is going to piss me off. And it makes her really happy because she feels like she was defiant,
Yeah.
And that's a long line of females strong-willed females in my family that say, I'm going to break the rules and you're going to watch me, And so I love, even though it's a pain in the butt, sometimes I love seeing it. And she recently started having seizures. It's been a year since she had a seizure where her heart stopped and she lost her breathing. And mom had to bring her back. And so she's on seizure meds, but we don't know how long that's going to last. And, what I learned. And so we don't go out to eat. Going on vacation is a nightmare. All these things that you typically do as a family, just scratch them off, or know that you have an immense amount of logistical planning ahead of you just to do something very simple. And so where are all these hundreds of millions of families? They're all at home surviving day to day. And that's where this macro piece hit me, where these families usually don't have the resources or the amount of energy to do anything about this. And so consequently, they're sort of, we call them underserved. Well, they're underheard, they're ignored, and if more children are dying, or they say 30% of children with a rare disease die before their 5th birthday, and there's about 200 million kiddos out there with a rare disease. You can imagine, we talk about 9/11, or we talk about the stuff happening in the Middle East, or genocide. This is the largest silent genocide that I think we've seen in our day and age, that is solvable to some degree, not completely curable, but we have science. And so that really drove me to say, it can't just be about Rose. Because I watched families develop these genetic treatments, especially those with a little bit of means.
Yeah.
You can go make an ASO or gene therapy for a few $1,000,000 and treat Rose in a clinical trial and move on with life, which you may not know this, or a lot of people may not know this, but there are families doing that now.
Yeah.
And it's a thing, and they're saving their kids' lives, but it's not scalable, and no parent should ever have to become a CEO of a biotech company, so that's kind of what I hope to prevent, and I hope to stop, is the burden, the financial burden and the educational burden, on these families, so that we can get these treatments out and accessible.
Well, I think that last term is the most important part there, accessible, because if it costs a couple $1,000,000, there's not a lot of families that can do that. Yeah, we're both CEOs, and neither of us can do it, right? So,
to me, that's why I had to learn fundraising. And there's this huge misconception that most rare disease is genetic, most genetic disease is ultra rare. So that is true. But there's this huge misconception that ultra rare drugs do not make money. And so it's been largely in the nonprofit world, which is completely unscalable. And you're just pouring money into a big black hole, without some sort of sustainable plan. And so that's why I started a company eventually, for Alpha Rose, was that the finances work. Maybe it's not $1 billion drug, but it certainly doesn't cost me $1 billion to get it, to commercialize it. So it's like the difference between building a residential house or building a skyscraper. We've been building skyscraper medicines with these small molecule programs. And those have a 90 to 95% failure rate. And genetic treatments, now no one's published on this, and I hope I can publish on this at some point. Genetic treatments have a exponentially higher chance of success. I'm watching dozens and dozens of these being developed by people for the first time, and they're working in the clinic, So to me, it feels like this is where medicine needs to go if we're going to start, bringing down drug prices and actually making precision medicines that fix, disease.
Are you enjoying the conversation? We'd love to hear from you. Please subscribe to the podcast and give us a rating. It helps other people find and join the conversation. If you've got speaker or topic ideas, we'd love to hear those too. You can send them in a podcast review.
Well, as we've discussed before, and you brought it up, the only way to change anything in this world is to figure out how to make money from it. It's not because it's the right thing to do. If you can align those things, then something good could happen, right? But you got to figure out how to make money from it. And the traditional pharma model of 12 years and billions of dollars of investment into this one small molecule that has 9 billion side effects, but it might actually treat your symptoms. And also it's going to cost you $120,000 a pop. That's the model. And precision medicine, personalized medicine has been something we've been throwing around for a long time. And you're right, it is partially there, but it's not accessible. And most people don't know that it's there. And yes, since all things on some level start with the genetics, especially diseases that arise from genetic mutations, is this something that can be knocked down through some sort of antisense, thing, attaching to it? It's really cool.
I think, it's interesting how accessible this was to me. Like a lot of the companies and family foundations and families that have sort of paved this road. In some ways, Eli Lilly started a group called Chorus, and they created this drug development model. And if you look at what they published, this is a huge, pharma corporation trying to figure out how to create like lower risk and create efficiencies. And I'm reading through it and sort of laughing because I'm like, this is exactly what families are doing. But they developed it. They developed this model on their own of what is enough, when time equals life and you don't have a money tree sitting next to you, then how do you do efficient product development for a patient that's going to save their life, and to your point, I've never been motivated by money solely. Like that's never been enough for me. But I think it's actually a fun part of this job for me because I know that proving to the investors when they make their great returns with lower risk off these genetic medicines, it means that the investment community is going to start shifting to what they used to call orphan, meaning like no home, to being like, oh man, I'd rather invest in these because, I want to invest in 20 of those instead of one big drug because I know that they're going to, most of them are going to work. And I want to be a part of that shift.
Yes. And so all you need is some high profile thing out there and then people are going to jump on it. And you're out there making lots of good noise in the investor communities, which tell us about Alpha Rose a little bit.
Yeah, well, so, the first thing that a lot of venture capital don't like is we're a public benefit corporation. And so what blew my mind is that healthcare companies as a corporation are only required to be fiduciarily responsible to their shareholders.
That's correct.
So you can screw over as many patients as you like, with sort of zero, blowback into, maybe in the press, but so what I love about public benefit corporations is more of a balance between your investors and your patients. And so you can't really screw either over, and I think in healthcare, there's this unique relationship between capital and patients. And it's like capitalism is great when you get great medicines out there that patients have access to. Capitalism's not great when you have shelved drugs that are working, but they, aren't going to make as much money. Or when you're choosing assets based on revenue, not based on the impact it's going to make on a patient. So I think there's a really nice balance. And so Alpha Rose is sort of fundamentally started with that approach and co-founded by Belinda Tremere and Alan Waltz, who, if you're familiar with the Genzyme story, Henry Tremere was one of the most innovative CEOs for rare disease, and Genzyme sold for $20 billion. And these two helped build that company. My president's Masako Nakamura. She was also at Genzyme, commercialized over 20 rare products in her career. So I have these really incredible folks on the executive level that believe that if you put patients first, you can build a very lucrative company by focusing on getting a treatment into patients as quickly and safely as possible and providing as much access as humanly possible. And they used to have a bell they would ring every time they treated a patient,
Oh, I love that.
globe. And so that culture is something I want to continue Henry's legacy in, that a company doesn't have to be a big, bad company to make money and to treat patients. And it's simply just, where's your focus? Is your focus solely to make money? And then patients are a part of that, well, then you become the big bad, healthcare company. But if you actually put patient, you can do good and make money. It's possible,
You can. Yes. It's harder.
The goal. Yeah. It requires drawing some lines in the sand for sure. And it requires a different kind of culture. But, so for Alpha Rose, we're sort of this integration between ASO technology and software, AI, eventually some robotics, and the idea that these are programmable medicines. So the more we can layer on automations through the preclinical, clinical, and commercialization process, the more ability we will have to scale these treatments. And what I realized in the lab, which was like the first company I started, was this preclinical lab, is that so many of these pieces are repeatable. And we're screening many, many compounds to try to figure out which one's toxic and which one's not. And I'm a musician, so, is it crazy to think that there might be some patterns in our biology to start helping us make the argument for predictive toxicity and predictive interaction with the gene, some predictive, at least genetic efficacy. And so far, nobody's told me that's crazy. And so we've been building some pilot systems to design our ASOs around this, and I'm very excited about it.
That's awesome. Clearly, we're well aligned on these things. So
Yeah.
I love the story. So talk a little bit about some of the technology you guys are using. This audience is both tech and science. So
Okay.
you've told me about this thing, and I can't wait to go see it. So it's
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so many things that need to be built. But the way I've been looking at this is we have this car, it kind of runs, and in the current regulatory environment, we can do this. These little diseases will still make some money. They'll still be expensive drugs.
Yeah.
But all of it works as if you create an efficient pipeline with the current technologies we have, which are ASO therapeutics, using that chemistry set, and then particular assays and animal studies that are required to make sure it's safe. But then you start adding in software, and ASOs are a sequence of nucleotides, and so are genes, right?
Yeah.
We quickly saw what if we have a database of genetic mutations, and we design some automation, some machine learning, and maybe some agentic AI to look at the amenability of each mutation for our technology. So building that database right now with neurodevelopmental and just pulling from Omen, ClinVar, and I think, this sounds like a great idea. Then the first problem we have is that, Omen doesn't communicate with Nomad, and they use different. And so I'm like, oh shit, it's like Chinese and English and Spanish all trying to collaborate together. So that became something we started building, was this Rosetta Stone to get the gene databases talking to each other. And then we built, which we showed you, and we've got a long way to go on this, but kind of the first iteration of an ASO design tool that could look at all of the factors that would create toxicity. So usually you design these in a spreadsheet, and you've got thousands of designs just walking down the gene. But now there are certain things like aspects around what's the most active area of the gene, where if we wanted to downregulate or upregulate a gene, what are those most, best areas to do that in? So that's short lists. What are the type nucleotide sequences that could be potentially more toxic? We can shortlist around that. And then there's some calcium stuff that also, this is where it gets a little bit a lot over my head. There's these sort of chemical and bio algorithmic assessments that we're able to make now to even shortlist. And so I think, we have really great potential with this design tool, by the more data, the more quality data we can feed it. And for that. The last thing that I'm excited about is we're taking, Rose's drug, Rosafersen, is ready for the clinic. And so we've been partnering with some wearable companies because the way they do clinical trials, like, I don't know, I didn't go to school for this, but when they told me this is how you do a clinical trial, I was like, I'm sorry, but this seems really dumb to me. A kid with this disease. And if you told me you're going to see efficacy based on the studies that you're currently doing, you're not. Like, the measurements that they'd come up with were like made in the 70s. Like, think about how much we've developed here, and yet how we're collecting data in our clinical trials has not.
Yep.
So we're using these wearables like to track Rose and these kids to establish a baseline, like a 3-dimensional digital footprint, unbiased, that we can collect from video, EEG and motor and cognition at their home, doing what they always do instead of being at a clinician's office. So I think there's going to be a lot of really cool innovation in that area to shorten the 6-year trial down to a year or two,
Yeah.
So these are all, technology pieces that now are super, super important that interface really, really well with this, with antisense oligonucleotides.
I'm excited to see where that goes. The wearable, the Internet of Things groups that have been trying to figure out how to pull this stuff in for a long time. There's like Pediatric Moonshot is another thing that's really interesting. They've been doing this, but wanting to take all that data and process it on the edge, and then take the process data and pull it into the middle to do something cool with it, right? Yeah.
I mean, I think that's I'm excited about, kind of the tools we have now. And it reminds me, again, like being in a music studio where you've got your analog synthesizers, you got your great compressors, you've got all these great tools to work with. The trick is it's the focus is that time does equal life, and that patients are waiting for these treatments. And we're in a war that kids and patients are dying every minute right now, that we have to be able to create an environment where we can quickly innovate and iterate on these technologies. Because it's like you're in a world war and you're trying to make a new gun or a new defense you don't have unlimited time to do this, so I do feel this sense of urgency and like bringing people in, like, let's work on this, let's fix this, we can do it, it's possible. So, it's exciting, but also frustrating.
Well, it's a short fuse, right? Some people are like, oh, what are you talking about? You got the rest of your life. Could be that long, right? That's what people don't realize. And also people are like, it's a rare disease. And you'll say that until it happens to you, right?
Yeah, you got a 1 in 20 chance of it happening to you or family member. And, we love to, I'll tell you, when I saw families with special needs kids, I had zero desire to meet them. I sure am glad that isn't me.
Yeah.
And when it happens to you, it's like, then all of a sudden you see all the other families out there that are struggling with this. And, it's a very different thing, but it's, there's the people that it hasn't happened to that actually have the capacity to do this stuff. Those are the people I consider true rock stars that are like, all right, we got to change this. Let's fix it. Where do we start?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I guess the last bit I'll ask you is to wrap up is how can people get involved and help?
We're always looking for great minds that have gifting that can help, participate and solve this problem. We're also looking for more mission-driven investors. You could easily turn our company into a large pharma company.
Yep.
So it's very important that our investors align with the fact that we're only going to be commercializing these ultra-rare products, and we're going to be focused on building the scale as opposed to just being a traditional company. And so, we're running a equity crowdfunding campaign where anyone can invest. That's started in .com/AlphaRose. And then, you can always find us on our website and on social media that if someone's interested in being a part of this in some way, we're looking for you. It's like the U.S., who was the old Uncle Sam?
Uncle Sam
Uncle Sam was like, we want you. because at the end of the day, there's hundreds of millions of patients waiting, and none of us can do this alone. So the more that we can partner, band together, put our resources together, Alpha Rose is merely a vessel to break open this space. I hope that many, many other companies do this like we're doing it and benefit from it too.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to see where this goes, and I hope that I get to jump in and help too, because it's an awesome effort. So,
you are. We needed many. We don't need many excuses to work together, because I have so much respect for you and your team and what you guys do.
I appreciate that. Well, we're looking forward to it, and thanks for being on the podcast today. Really appreciate it, and I hope people reach out and get involved and realize, hey, precision medicine is closer than we think, and it's not just for the ultra rich.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Ari.
Thanks, Casey. Take care.
Thank you for listening to BioIT World's Trends from the Trenches podcast.